In this edition of One American News Investigates, we expose the corruption of Joe Biden, his campaign, his legacy, and a desperate media apparatus scrambling to protect him. Our investigation into Biden corruption takes us next to a series of just-released phone recordings out of Ukraine. Recordings that tell a corruption tale so damaging, the Biden campaign even sent their media hitmen to try and kill it. They failed, and we bring this story straight to you, the American people, for you to decide. What you're about to hear is a continuation of OAN's exclusive series investigating Biden corruption in Ukraine, a story where truth in Biden's world is truly darker than fiction. Joe Biden's Ukraine problem boils down to a simple charge. Vice President Biden, as Ukraine point man under Obama, bribed the Ukrainian government with $1 billion US tax dollars. Biden's bribe was designed for one thing: to stop the investigation into his son Hunter and Burisma Oil, the Ukrainian company paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month to simply sit on its board. But rather than acknowledging any of this, the media played cover-up for Biden, stating it was all conspiracy theories and Russian propaganda. Shokin, they said, was a corrupt prosecutor general and had to go. This narrative made it all the way to Congress in defense of Biden.
The facts about Vice President Biden's conduct are clear and do not change. Let's go through them. First, every witness asked about this topic testified that Mr. Shokin was widely considered to be a corrupt and ineffective prosecutor.
But the entire Biden narrative that Victor Shokin was a, quote, bad guy who needed replacing was turned completely on its head by Ukrainian Member of Parliament Andrei Derkach. In a one-hour press conference on May 19, 2020, Derkach released phone recordings of Joe Biden, Secretary of State John Kerry, and President Petro Poroshenko, all discussing the fate of Prosecutor General Victor Shokin. In this December 3, 2015 recording, Secretary of State John Kerry proposes to President Poroshenko the idea that Biden would really like to see the Prosecutor General problem resolved.
But before Vice President Biden comes, I just wanted to try to urge you to see if there's a way to get by this problem of replacing the Prosecutor General, Shokin, because from our perception, he's blocked the cleanup of the Prosecutor General's office, and I know the Vice President is very concerned about it.
The awkward coincidence in taking issue with Victor Shokin at this time was the fact that Victor Shokin's office happened to be investigating Burisma Oil. In fact, Shokin had declared the founder of Burisma a fugitive of Ukraine. Burisma was Ukraine's largest oil and gas company and was paying Joe Biden's drug addict son, Hunter, $83,000 per month to, ostensibly, do nothing but sit there. New York Times bestselling author Peter Schweitzer tells One American News, Joe Biden claimed to know nothing of his son's business dealings overseas, yet deals just fell in Hunter's lap without justification in all the countries for which Joe Biden was point man.
Hunter Biden was given lucrative deals in both countries that he had zero qualifications for and had zero background in. And so the question is, and it's a very simple question, is what were the Chinese and the Ukrainians paying for? We know that Hunter Biden has no expertise. We know he can't add any value to the company with regards to a skill set or an ability to advise him in any way. So what are they actually paying for? And I think that's a question that Hunter Biden should be asked. And I think the U.S. Senate should ask it.
But it wasn't just Joe Biden's son. John Kerry had an interest in getting Victor Shokin out of the Prosecutor General's office as well. Another American named Devon Archer was appointed to the board of Burisma. Archer, too, made tens of thousands of dollars per month off Burisma Oil. Devon Archer was Hunter Biden's friend and business partner. Devon also just happened to be John Kerry's senior advisor during Kerry's presidential campaign, and just happened to be the college roommate and later business partner of Christopher Hines, John Kerry's stepson. Another awkward fact for Kerry: John Kerry's chief of staff, David Leiter, was also making money off of Burisma Holdings. Burisma paid Kerry's chief of staff $90,000 in 2014 to lobby Congress and the State Department. 4 days after Kerry's discussion about the problem of Viktor Shokin, Joe Biden flew to Ukraine. Here's where the timeline gets interesting. 2 months later, on February 2nd, 2016, Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin's office seized Burisma founder Nikolai Zlochevsky's property and assets.
That's the month in which Shokin, who supposedly wasn't investigating anybody, that's another Biden lie, raided Burisma and put them under arrest. The owner of Burisma, who was crooked as all get out, Zlochevsky, was afraid his business was going to be taken away, and he brought Biden in for what he had bribed Biden to do, which was to fix the case for him.
Let's revisit our interview with Shokin back in Kyiv. I asked Shokin why he resigned, and he affirmed what he had sworn in a 12-page affidavit. He was pressured to resign because his office started seizing Burisma assets and in the process began to unveil Hunter Biden's involvement in illegal money laundering. My conversation with Poroshenko on this, Shokin says, was in a phone call. It was after we started seizing Burisma assets in Ukraine when Poroshenko called me and said, "Listen, this all has to stop already. Joe Biden's temper is overflowing. This seizing of Burisma assets," said Poroshenko, was the last straw. Shokin says Poroshenko then paid him a visit in his office, asking for Shokin's resignation. Shokin responded and asked, "Why do I have to go? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm doing my job. This is standard procedure. We have reason to freeze Burisma assets." And Poroshenko said, "Biden is angry about you freezing Burisma assets. I'll figure something out." Now, the media and the Biden campaign slammed this account when it was first broadcasted, accusing Shokin of lying and arguing ad nauseum that Biden had Shokin removed because he was a corrupt prosecutor. When we return, Derkach's press conference reveals an explosive conversation between Biden and Poroshenko that directly contradicts Biden's claims about Viktor Shokin. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The following conversation, dated February 18, 2015, appears to show Poroshenko admitting Shokin did nothing wrong, but was forced to resign anyways, at Biden's request.
The Situation Room is...
Hello. Joe Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Your call is reconvened.
Petro, can you hear me?
Yeah, that was better.
I can hear you better too. I'm sorry.
No problem.
You were saying, I missed what you were saying.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm very happy to hear you. Second, this is very valuable for me that you find out a time for me even in Minnesota. And I'm dreaming some days to be in Minnesota.
That's easy, man. I tell you what, I'd like to be with you instead of Minnesota right now, but go ahead.
The third, I have some positive and negative news. I will start with the positive news.
Well, good.
Joe, I have a second positive news for you. Yesterday, I meet with the General Prosecutor Shokin.
Yes.
And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign.
Derkach told One American News these are only parts of a larger stash of recordings. We have chosen fragments from the many hours of recordings, says Derkach, which were recommended to us by investigative journalists. What was the most astonishing about these recordings is the direct evidence of treason and government betrayal. Rudy Giuliani tells One American News this only confirms the work of John Solomon, OAN, and the evidence he has handed over himself to the DOJ.
Poroshenko makes it clear to him that Shokin was not corrupt, because that was a cover story they were using in order to justify getting rid of him. Now, you can remember last year when this first came out, all the Biden sycophants talked about how corrupt Shokin is.
While U.S. media seemed largely to ignore these recordings, OAN decided to dig deeper. Connecting with unnamed intelligence and government sources in Ukraine, OAN discovered an additional 5 hours of recordings that had yet to be published. In this discovery, we confirmed for ourselves that indeed, the Nabu leaks press releases were mere fragments of a much more explosive story. John Kerry, Joe Biden, President Poroshenko, all on record discussing the delicate business of firing the highest law enforcement official in Ukraine in exchange for $1 billion US tax dollars. An extraordinary unraveling. Let's go back to the conversation where Poroshenko tells Biden he has received the resignation letter from Viktor Shokin.
And as a finish of my meeting with him, he promised me to give me the statement on resignation. And 1 hour ago, he bring me the written statement of his resignation.
Great.
And this is my second step for keeping my promises.
I agree.
Once Shokin is finally removed from office, Poroshenko has another conversation with Biden about Shokin's replacement.
Assuming that there is a new government and a new prosecutor general, I am prepared to do a public signing of the commitment for the $1 billion. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's what you want or don't want. I'm just suggesting that that's what we're prepared to do. And again, it wouldn't be finalized until, the IMF pieces are written.
Extremely strong motivation. One of the possible candidates was leader of my fraction, Lutsenko, who is the public figure. If you think that the political motivated figure would be not very good from your point of view, I recall this proposal. I do not propose, because nobody knows that I want to propose Lutsenko.
Biden goes on to say he will consider this option and get back with Poroshenko on the matter. Take a step back for a moment. The conversation you just heard would be parallel to Prince Charles calling President Trump and telling him to remove Attorney General William Barr and provide him with replacement options, of which his team would consider for the United States. An assault on sovereignty by every definition. One American News caught up with New York Times bestselling author of Profiles in Corruption, Peter Schweitzer.
Federal law says if you are a public official, that includes the Vice President of the United States, and you are making decisions that are going to materially benefit members of your family, that's a violation of federal law. And even though the initial claims were that this individual was not investigating Hunter Biden, we know that he was.
Here is a document showing how many investigations there were regarding Mr. Zlochevsky and Burisma.
Вот. Раз, два, три, четыре, пять.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
If, in fact, we could confirm that these recordings are accurate, it's further confirmation that Joe Biden is making a material decision to effect a criminal investigation in a foreign country that involves his son and involves a company that is paying his son $1 million a year. And that, to me, again, seems to pretty consistently violate U.S. federal ethics laws, which preclude government officials from making those kinds of actions or engaging in those kinds of decision-making.
Derkach, as a member of parliament, filed a statement with the Prosecutor General's office to investigate the matter, charging former President Poroshenko of conspiracy with Joe Biden and John Kerry to, quote, put pressure on the members of Ukrainian parliament to make decisions beneficial for Biden and Kerry. Derkach charges Poroshenko of treason under Article 3 of the Ukrainian Criminal Code.
I mean, the information is quite incriminating if you know the case. I mean, first of all, it shows that Biden has been lying about the fact that he was unaware of the case, or he was unaware of his son's business in Ukraine, because he talks about his son's business in Ukraine. So it makes him a liar about that.
Fast forward in the timeline to May 13, 2016. One day after Yuri Lutsenko was appointed to replace Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin. Biden was especially happy about Lutsenko's appointment. Lutsenko did not have any legal experience, yet was appointed to lead the highest legal office in Ukraine. Biden seems eager to immediately direct Lutsenko's next moves.
Congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee.
Derkach reiterated the recordings released in his one-hour briefing were fragments. Giuliani says the conversations that came after Lutsenko was installed would be especially revelatory.
And I would hope that those tapes are put out also. And there are some that are far more damaging than that one.
Giuliani is right. In the additional recordings provided by top intelligence officials to OAN, official and unofficial recordings are proving Biden was far more involved in the Ukrainian prosecutor general's office than he has publicly admitted. A possibility the Biden campaign seems to fear so much, they immediately sent a media lapdog to find out what we had and chill our story. We'll be right back. If it seems Joe Biden's abuse of power as vice president and point man in Ukraine does not seem to receive much media fanfare, you're right. Peter Schweitzer says one reason the Bidens keep evading scrutiny is media's systematic cover-up of all Biden's sins, especially in Ukraine.
I think the general problem is more with the editors. And what's stunning in the case of Hunter Biden as it relates to Ukraine is the complete and total lack of any curiosity about these deals. I mean, think about it. I mean, if this were Donald Trump Jr., they would all be investigating it. And by the way, they should. That's their job. But for some reason, they don't feel it's even necessary to put a reporter on this. These are very simple, basic questions involving a foreign government, not a foreign company, a foreign government setting up a profitable venture for the son of the sitting American vice president. And for the media to say, we don't think there's a story there, when they haven't even looked at it, is really absolutely shocking.
I reached out to Joe Biden's campaign for comment on the Derkach released recordings and the additional recordings OAN was now investigating. I found Biden's communications director, Kate Bedingfield, who is frequently found giving interviews on cable news. Dear Miss Bedingfield, I wrote, I am seeking Mr. Biden's or the campaign's comment on this series of phone recordings allegedly portraying the voices of Mr. Biden and President Poroshenko of Ukraine. I asked whether Mr. Biden would affirm or deny the recordings and that we had over 5 hours of recordings beyond what was posted online by Nabu Leaks. Barely 24 hours later, I received a response. Not from the Biden campaign, but from a magazine, The Atlantic. A writer named Isaac Dover sent the following message. Hi, Chanel. I'm told that you have 5 hours of recordings of Joe Biden and Petro Poroshenko on top of what has been put out by Nabu Leaks. He proceeds to ask what is in the additional recordings, who I received them from, and later asserts that these recordings are tied to Russian intelligence. Dover also raises a suspicious brow, assuming these recordings were brought to me. Dover makes what later proved to be a false claim that he is writing a story on these recordings as well. Catching me by phone, Dover insisted I divulge my source of the additional recordings OAN was investigating. Refusing to oblige this unethical request, I in turn asked Dover whether the Biden campaign regularly sent him internal communiques. I also asked whether the DNC or the Biden campaign advertised with The Atlantic and its affiliates. Dover did not answer these questions. The Biden campaign never responded to my request, seeming instead content to send Dover instead. Interestingly, Dover has a history of attacking other journalists in defense of Joe Biden. In 2019, Isaac Dover was called out for spreading tabloid-level lies about a pro-Sanders journalist. The Atlantic published Dover's article, but stealth-edited the piece after the fact in order to correct the slanderous lies Dover manufactured. Journalist Glenn Greenwald exposed Dover's work at length, concluding, The Atlantic's article was false in almost every material respect. If The Atlantic's Isaac Dover were Team Biden's solution to chilling stories against Joe, it seems it would behoove them to find a more cunning tool from the toolbox. We continued our investigation, sifting through new recordings. The 5 hours of recorded conversation turned into 10. This time, what appears to be private conversations between Biden and Poroshenko. Conversations showing deals bargained, promises made, coming from Ukrainian Secret Service and separately confirmed by a source who was present during some of these recordings. We realized this story would go well past the summer and into the fall as we embarked on the long journey of verifying and investigating these additional recordings. But Dover did not stop with his initial inquiry to me. Dover went the extra step of reaching out to OAN leadership to try and cast doubt on the story, desperate to assume that whatever we had was the product of Russian intelligence. Note, Dover still didn't know what we had. Before this portion of the investigation was broadcast, Dover published his article in The Atlantic, an article not about the Biden recordings for which he had feigned such keen interest. Dover's story turns out to be a thinly cited hit piece on OAN. Is OAN the leading edge of Russian misinformation? The Biden campaign says Trump's favorite TV network is peddling the Kremlin's lies. A far cry from the headline Dover implied. Even more curious, a headliner charge waged before even seeing the evidence or the investigation. Accuse first, verify never? Dover conveniently procured a response from the Biden campaign. Team Biden turned to the ever-creative, pay no mind, it's all Russian propaganda, hypnosis. And The Atlantic waltzed right along. Little wonder the once respected magazine went from a $10 million a year profit down to a bleeding 500,000 circulation, hemorrhaging money, readers, and integrity. Not necessarily in that order.
Isn't it amazing? These allegations have been out there for 3 years, right? And all the Biden people do is they've been debunked, they've been investigated and done away with. Of course, they haven't been. And this is the first time in 3 years that anybody's going to interview any of the witnesses.
This pattern of cover-up and intimidation may help explain how exactly Joe Biden has made it this far. No doubt, The Atlantic is just one of many manipulated media puppets at Biden's disposal. After all, with Biden's nearly 50 years in the D.C. swamp, relationships are made. The question is, for how long can they simply use the Russian propaganda boogeyman to stave off the mounting evidence? They're pulling out all the stops. Will it be enough? We'll be right back. So how was Derkach's explosive press release about Biden bribes received in Ukraine? Andrei Derkach told One American News President Zelensky called for an investigation, agreeing that Poroshenko partook in at least high treason. But Zelensky later walked back his statement, feeling such an investigation would harm Joe Biden so badly, Zelensky pulled back for fear his government would be accused of interfering with the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. But Derkach argues this is a Ukrainian matter. Joe Biden was the one who interfered, and a joint investigation commission should investigate. Ukraine is an independent country and cannot be governed by external forces, especially for the sake of selfish personal interests. Just 2 days after Derkach's press conference sharing Biden's bribe tapes, a Ukrainian court formally listed Viktor Shokin the victim of a crime committed by Vice President Joe Biden to illegally remove Shokin from office using a monetary bribe, a case that will continue well into the fall. So stay with us. This is an ongoing investigation, and it's only just begun. In the next installment of this OAN exclusive investigation, we share official and what even appears to be unofficial audio recordings of Joe Biden's wheeling and dealing. We look into what happened to Biden's $1 billion bribe and show irrefutable evidence of how your $1 billion tax dollars found a cozy home in Poroshenko's pockets. Biden wants this story to disappear. He is sending his global attack puppets in the press to discredit, slime, and slander. But rest assured, we are unfazed and we are unafraid. We won't stop until the truth about Biden's legacy is fully unfurled. So stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, for the latest episode of OAN Investigates. For One American News, I'm Chanel Rion. Thank you for watching.